I'm not a woman. So I was slightly surprised when I was asked to speak at this event. I think maybe the name Jesse might have thrown some people. It's very possible. And they said, "Oh, talk about your apocalypse stuff." And I'm like, "Okay, no, you can see that on the internet." And I thought I would use this as an opportunity to talk a little bit about some thoughts I had about women in games, because there's a lot of questions that I think swirl around in people's minds about that. It's something we always talk about, is the underrepresentation of women in the industry, and what does this mean, and what does this mean for gaming? It's something that's always meant a lot to me, and I'm very pleased to say we have Sherry Grant-Array at our studio. She's the design director of our studio, and she heads up our Austin office, and we also have several other women on staff, as much as, but we're still, what's our ratio, Sherry, do you know? Have you counted? I haven't counted.
Yeah, we're about 35% female. We're actually pretty good.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
That's better than I thought. And this is something that, it's always been something very much on my mind, because I've always noticed how different the approaches of men and women to game design and development. So I guess I'm going to start out quoting Tim Allen, if you remember. He was once very wisely said, "Men are pigs. Too bad we own everything." And it kind of is this question of why is it that way in the game industry, and why is it that way still? Because if you look around GDC, there's a snapshot. Now that was 3 years ago, but look, that's all dudes. You can look in there, maybe somebody there, I'm not quite sure. Could be, there might be a woman in there, but it's hard to spot. So what's up with that? It seems strange, because in terms of people who play games, I don't see that that's the representation, and it's something, at the university we think about a lot as well. Now, one of the things I can't help but notice, because we focus a lot on interdisciplinary teamwork at the university, we put students in groups, and we try and create situations where they have to make something under incredible pressure. We put a team where there's like a programmer and a painter and a 3D modeler and a sound designer on a team, where we say, "You have 2 weeks to make an amazing virtual world, go!" And we've done, I've been at this 9 years now, I think we've done 1,000 of these worlds over that period of time. And you start to notice patterns. And one of the patterns I can't help but notice is when you have 4 guys on a team, what often happens is they overscope in a ridiculous way. They take on things they couldn't possibly make, and they end up often with crashing failure. Yeah. And whereas when you have a team that even just has one woman on, it's something that I've always noticed throughout my career, is that things change. And it's partly because of her contribution, but I can't help but notice the guys act different. The guys stop and think just a little bit more when there is a woman in the room. When I remember times back at Disney, I'd be in some design thing, people were like, "Yeah, let's build this." And I look around, I'm like, "Oh crap, there are no women in this room." And I'd be like, "Guys, hang on a second." I'd bring in an administrative assistant if I had to, and have her just like, "Hey, I want you to hear this." And I was like, "What?" And then we'd go through it again, and it would be different. Because there's something, I think, that happens in the guy's mind that is like, "Oh, maybe I should stop and think. Maybe we shouldn't crash this boat. Maybe that wouldn't be so cool." That happens there. And it's something that I've noticed. And I used to think this was just me, it was my observation, but I don't know if people have seen the study on collective intelligence by Dr. Anita Woolley. This came out a few months ago. And this was fascinating to me. What she was trying to study is the nature of group intelligence. naively you'd think that, well, the intelligence of the group is probably the average of the IQs or something like that. But she was looking at what is it that makes one group behave in a more intelligent way than another group. And so she set up these situations where they give groups problems to solve of all kinds. Spatial puzzles and word puzzles and ethical dilemmas, all kinds of problems that a group would have to solve together, and try to look for what is it, and then they'd score the groups, and then look for what are the patterns, what are the things that would happen that would make one group more intelligent than another. And one of the things that was fascinating to me is that she found that first of all, IQ had no part in the equation. It was almost irrelevant to the equation. And that there were three things that were the prime movers for what was going to make a group intelligent. And all three of them, I think there's some female advantage. So the three factors, the first one is social sensitivity. And the way they would measure social sensitivity in an individual is they have this thing they call the eyes test, where they show you all these photographs of people who have an emotion. And you have to identify the emotion. And how does this person feel right now? And they can give you a score based on that. And the ability of the individuals to perform well on the eyes test had a lot to do with the collective intelligence of the group. And I don't know, but my personal experience has been that my wife is better at this than me. Secondly, they had these devices that would measure when people were talking and when other people were talking, so they were actually able to make a quantitative measure of conversational turn-taking. In other words, if people cut each other off, this group did badly in terms of collective intelligence. But if they let each other finish and had conversations in a kind of a more humane, polite way, the collective intelligence was much higher. And again, I felt, I think there's maybe some female advantage here. And the third one, I think there is a particular female advantage, although some people may dispute it. The number of women in the group was directly related to the collective intelligence of the group. And I just thought that was fascinating. So, why do game companies make bad decisions? Now you know why. And I had to think back. It's something I've always noticed is that things that women create often have a different tone and quality and caliber than the things men have created. I think of Mary Poppins, right, written by Pam Travers, and all the illustrations done by Mary Shepard. The whole core of that property, I don't think men could have created this property. And more modern, similar, Nanny McPhee. I don't know if people. I have a 10-year-old daughter. I see a lot of kids' movies, but Nanny McPhee Returns, which I just thought was this incredibly charming movie, and it had something special about it. And it wasn't until I was reading the credits and I'm like, written by women, directed by women, produced by women. This was almost a very much female-led production. And people have seen this, Ramona and Beezus. It's the same thing. Of course, Beverly Cleary, wrote these stories. This movie ended up being sort of love letters to the works of Beverly Cleary. And again, female director. And I remember I read a review of this book, of this movie, and it was written by some guy. And his review was like, oh man, they missed so many opportunities for comedy in this. I don't know why. There's so many ways of speaking of it. They could have put a lot of slapstick comedy here. They just threw it away. And I'm like, wow, did you miss the bus on this movie? Because this was surprisingly, it looks just like a kid's story. They actually made it this sort of intergenerational story about relationships. A guy could not have written Harry Potter. No freaking way. No way. The way the relationships and the way the characters interrelate in that book, it simply couldn't have happened. But still, in the game world, it's still pretty much run by dudes. So why is this? Now, we used to have the old argument, right? The old arguments were, well, it's just the nature of the medium, right? It's the nature of the medium because it's how games are. And you can make this argument, like, okay, well, if you look at the early days of video games, what are they? You got suddenly you're allowed in a world where you can do anything you want. No one can possibly get hurt, no matter how stupid a thing they do. Can't happen. And it's really hard to talk to each other. This is kind of guy heaven right here. Right? There's a name for this place. It's an ancient place. It was called Valhalla. So people know, your Norse history here. Valhalla was heaven for the Vikings. When noble Vikings were killed in battle, they'd go to Valhalla. If you don't know the schedule of events at Valhalla, it works this way. You get up in the morning, and you got to go out on the battlefield. Because that's all there is to do. Because why would you need anything else? And so you're out on the battlefield, and we are going to fight it. And then you spend the whole day fighting it, and like a lot of people get killed, right? And you get killed and brutally murdered on the battlefield, or you survive and you get to see another day. But it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, all the dead bodies, everybody gets up and goes back to the dining hall, and you have a party and you talk about, how awesome your day was. And then you simply do this every day again forever. And so the early days of video games, it's like, hey, congratulations, we actually brought this ancient Norse, vision to life. And so some people would say, well, this is what the nature of video games just sort of points towards. And so that's kind of a very somewhat masculine vision. But now other people say other things. They say, well, no, you see, this is a leadership issue. Because guys run everything, and this is just, game industry is just another everything. And that's just the nature of it, and that's just how it's always going to be, because guys run everything. Well, I would sometimes consider that argument, but then I had a really interesting experience. I was asked to speak at the PBS Kids Producers Summit earlier this year, where this is, PBS, public television. Once a year they have a summit where they get together the producers of every single kids show for all of public television, and they get together and share, knowledge and wisdom and planning. And I was asked to give a talk at this, and I've been like, something's weird about this place. I don't know what it is. And I realized, this whole thing, this is an entire sector of the entertainment industry almost completely run by women. I'm not going to say that it's all women that are running, but it's mostly women, and further, they're the ones, the ones who aren't women aren't the ones running the show in most cases, from what I saw. And that was really eye-opening to me. And I mean, on some level, hey, it makes sense. Here you've got a thing, you've got a place that's all about education, nurture, that may be more naturally attractive to women, and then it's run well, and the content that comes out of it is absolutely incredible. Now, we know the game world is changing. So there's, your console revenues through 2009, and I don't know exactly the 2010 numbers, but I'm pretty sure that it's not getting higher. And this is partly due to the fact that the nature of games is changing. Mobile is getting very big, and social, right, is getting very big. Everyone's noticed the last 2 years. Suddenly, social games are an incredible growth area because games, it turns out, are better with friends. And Facebook is something that I think is I don't know if guys understand it very well. I was just giving a talk at some other industry meeting where I was talking to these industry leaders. Every single one of them, everyone was a white guy between 35 and 55. Every single one of them. And they wanted me to come and talk about social gaming. Social gaming is changing things. And I'm talking about it, they're fidgety and they're shifting. And eventually the host comes in and says, hey, let's just take a quick poll. Who here is not on Facebook? And actually, let's do that in this room. Who here is not on Facebook? Raise your hands right now. Right? That'll last about 5 minutes. She'll help you out. As was mentioned. Right? 80% of the room raised their hand, not being on Facebook. And one of them said, yeah, you know, I don't know. My wife's on it, my kids are on it. I don't get it. I don't know, you go on there and tell people how you feel about things. What? You know, why do I want to do that? I'm not sure I get that. And even if you look at the players, so here's the PopCap survey of social game players, 45% male, 55% female. So here we have a sector of the game industry dominated by women. And further, I mean, in the past 2-3 years, we've moved from a place where it was all about ninjas and zombies and stuff, to suddenly the big growth games that everyone are talking about are about farming and yoga and dancing and pets. And I'm going to tell you right now, ladies, we don't know what the hell we're doing. Wait, we really have no idea. We look at this stuff and it's like, we don't understand. We don't understand how it works, or how to play it, or why people would play it, and we're faking it. Right? So, this is your time, without doubt. And the last thing I'll say is, I, for one, welcome our new female overlords. Thank you.